Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings throughout the world, throughout the universe, throughout the country. It's a blessing to be here with you all. I'm Dustin Cron, the founder of the Center for Global Muslim Life. We are blessed to join with Jetpack and the Muslim Caucus in hosting this forum on Muslim American issues and the election 2020. We felt that it was really important that we bring together a group for us to discuss these issues facing our community. Yesterday, we talked about poverty. Today, we're going to talk about racism throughout the United States in this moment of fascism growing in our country, of white supremacy growing in our country. And we really are blessed to have a beautiful panel. We have 5 days of programs, including a long program on the day of the election itself. So right now, I'm going to bring in Brother Muhammad from Jetpack to introduce his organization.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dustin. Jetpack, we're really proud to be part of this collaboration. We think it's really important to showcase the many different ways in which Muslim activists, civil rights leaders, journalists, like as you'll see today, and all the different organizations that have been launched over the last 4 years to increase our civic footprint as a community, but also to then therefore defeat Islamophobia by becoming a greater, more active part of our big American fabric. So Jetpack trains American Muslims who want to run for office one day, and we also train people who want to work in government and who want to work for political campaigns. And that's one way in which we contribute. I think it's really important, and we'll see today on today's panel the many different ways in that the community is growing in the political space and how we're increasing our civic footprint. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's going to speak today and kick it off to Ghazala.
Thank you, Mohammed. Systemic racism is the most important issue in the United States today. And it has been so before the founding of our nation. Race, equality, equity are matters of presidential priority. Addressing systemic racism is a key component of the Muslim Caucus Education Collective, and the threat of white supremacy and domestic terrorism also play a major role. The Muslim Caucus focuses on these issues, including work on comprehensive police reform rooted in local community engagement and empowerment. And I know that we will not solve these systemic racism issues of inequality overnight, but we have so much work ahead of us, which is one of the reasons, as Dustin mentioned, we wanted to do this live forum series so that we can establish and develop an agenda, a platform for organizing and mobilizing Muslims after 2020, after this election on November 3rd, because regardless of who wins, our issues are not going to go away. And these issues definitely will not go away. So with that, I would like to introduce to you Tahirah Amatul Wadud, who will be moderating tonight's panel. Tahirah is an attorney, a community leader, an advocate, and activist, and she previously ran for Congress. So assalamu alaikum and welcome, Tahirah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is so good to see you, Ghazala. Thank you for inviting me. And salams to Mohammed Missouri and to Dustin. Thank you again for putting together this wonderful conversation. Would you like me to go right into the bios for our esteemed panel, Ghazala?
Yes, please. Each panelist will have 5 minutes to speak, and Tahirah will introduce each one of the panelists when it is, when it's their turn to speak.
Wonderful. And welcome to our audience. What a way to spend a Saturday night, the weekend before the big election, being in community and learning about the issues and talking with people who study these things for a living. This is just the most constructive way, I think, to spend the last few days before we go into what will be the most consequential election of our time. Let me introduce to you our wonderful panel. And for everyone that we have here tonight, I would encourage you to follow them on social media, look them up, learn more about them, and sort of immerse yourself in the work that they're doing that makes it possible for them to contribute to this vibrant conversation. Let's see. So first we have Daisy Khan, and Daisy is the founder and executive director, and my computer just went dead. Daisy is the founder and executive director of the Women's Initiative in Spirituality and Equality. Daisy has a new book coming out. It's a book on Muslim women's rights, and she'll be speaking tonight about white supremacy. We also have Ewuare Osayande. Ewuare is a founder and principal of Origin, the Osayande Racial Justice Initiative, which provides consultation and training for organizations seeking to strengthen their commitment in the work of racial equity and justice. An activist and educator, Osayande is an institutional change leader with over 30 years of international experience in the work of social justice. Osayande is a former professor of African American Studies in Rutgers. So thank you and welcome. We also have our friend Amer Zahr. Amer is an Arab American comedian, speaker, writer, academic, and adjunct professor. And I checked out some of his material and Ewuare's material on YouTube right before we joined tonight, and I think they are fascinating. We also have Rushan Abbas, who is the executive director in the campaign for the Uyghurs. We have my friend Zahra Billo. Zahra is the executive director at the Council for American Islamic Relations, and she's a community leader. She's on there as well. Rowaida Abdelaziz is a national reporter covering Islamophobia and social justice issues at HuffPost. Follow her work as well. We also have Abdul Samad. He is the Iowa State Representative and founder of Creative Visions, the Muslim Caucus and the Muslim Caucus Advisory Board. And so thank you and welcome to everyone. So the format of today is that we're going to go probably in the same order in which I introduced you. And each of you will have 5 minutes to tell the world what you want them to know about the subject matter that you've sort of been pegged to talk about tonight. So I would say, let's start with Daisy. Daisy, are you there? And are you able to join in? There she goes. And I checked out Daisy on YouTube as well. So fascinating indeed. Thank you and welcome, Daisy. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, everyone. Thank you so much. I will, start because I've watched this film on Netflix. Many of you know Social Dilemma, and finally understood why there is the deep polarization that we're finding in this country. It's not that people just got up overnight and started hating one another. There are tools that are enabling people to distrust one another. And it's all about algorithms. So we also have to talk about that in the future, because somebody mentioned that Facebook is not allowing Muslims to run ads. Well, we have to be one of those organizations that has not gotten approval. We keep getting disapproved again and again. And most of our ads are about promoting understanding. And we even got refused by Google recently. So there is a effort going on to prevent Muslims from doing the kind of work we're doing. So I think that it's really important now that I feel there's a dire need to do better, to read, to learn, and to listen as a pathway to end racism. We held a wonderful session on Zoom right after George Floyd, and I discovered a lot about the African American community that I did not know, because we had a very deep dialogue. So I think that at the end of the day, whatever happens at the election, this is the work that lies ahead of all of us. And everybody knows that hate groups vilify race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, and they strike at the heart of our core values and fracture society along those fragile lines. And we also know that in year 2019, there were 599 hate groups, and now there are 940, and who knows, probably even more than that. So I really wanted to do something that was concrete. This is the way we operate. We like to do research. We like to put periodicals out there so that we can create this kind of deep listening, learning, understanding. So we have decided that we're going to publish a research paper or research document that clearly explains what this white supremacy group, who are these people? What do they believe? And examine why they have risen so fast. And what is the difference between neo-Nazi and alt-right, and look at what is enabling these groups and what is at the heart of their what we call the mobilizing factors. And so the section 1 of the book is going to be dedicated to examining each and every group and how every group how different they are from one another socially, politically, identity-wise. And then the second section of the book is going to be the heart of the book, which is what drives these people, and how do they actually weaponize Christianity, similar to what Daesh did with Islam, weaponizing Islam. Believe it or not, the white supremacist group also weaponized Christianity. And this has come as a major surprise to many of my Christian friends and allies who are very keen to join us to, push back on that. And their social factors are, their drivers are social, political, identity factors. And, then the third section of the book is really talking about how they vilify different groups of people. Each group, like anti-Black racism, has a very unique, thing to it. And what are their tropes and triggers against that group? Anti-Semitism has its own tropes and triggers. Anti-immigrant has its own tropes and triggers. And of course, our focus of the book is going to be Muslims. Specifically, how do they come after Muslims? What do they say about us? And how do they attack us? And what are the weapons that they use against us? So it's going to be somewhat detailed. And, for instance, the common one is that Islam is a political ideology, a totalitarian regime. It's not even a religion. So it is not protected, under the freedom of religion. So these are some of the things that are going to be in this book. We hope to publish it before the year end. I'm saying we hope. I hope we can pull it off. We're moving very quickly. And around that, we will be doing a plan of action centered around this book on re-educating the public on the subject of white supremacy. That's what the tagline is. Because really, there are too many people on the fence, in the middle, who are supporting these groups and don't even know what they're supporting. And they need to be educated about who these groups are and how much of a danger they not only pose to all minority groups, but really even to white people who disagree with them. So it's going to be marketed as an educational resource, online remote learning. And so what we are looking for, and I would love for this kind of a forum to happen around this book, so we can, once you have it in your hand, to see how we might be able to digest it and disseminate it widely into communities. So at this point, we have many interfaith allies who really want to create a more nuanced conversation about racism and the rise of extremism, which is, with white supremacy and all extremist groups, by the way, Hindutva and Buddhism, it seems to be on the rise, and it's partly aided and abetted by social media. And so it's important for us now to create a kind of a contagion effect and get our allies, because many of our allies are very sympathetic to what is happening to Muslims in this country. And if we can equip them with this information, where the information spreads from person to person, and then the resiliency is built among communities by keeping these sort of allyships and their connections alive. So I thank you very much for listening to me.
Wonderful. Daisy, would you please tell our viewers where they can learn more about your work, how they can follow you on social media? And after all of the panelists go, we'll open it up for questions, because you've just introduced us to something that's pretty remarkable and that we definitely need to delve into a little deeper. So where can we reach you on social media?
So I'm Daisy Khan everywhere on all social media. We do have, what I can do is I can use this chat to drop some of my social media in here, organizational social media, because I'm kind of not very adept at which one has which name, which handle. But we are everywhere, but really it's wisemuslimwomen.org is our website. That is where people can go, and you can find a lot of information about this. And you can contact me directly, Daisy at wisemuslimwomen.org. and I can be that conduit where I will provide information to everyone. We need partners. That's what we need right now. And otherwise it's not going to succeed. And we do have a launch date on December 18th. So.
Ooh, wonderful. That's great. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely circle back.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce our next panelist, Ewuare Osayande. Ewuare, are you on?
Yes, I'm
welcome. Thank you. Take it away.
Oh, it's much appreciated, Sister Tahirah.
Welcome.
Peace to everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ewuare Osayande. I am the founder and principal of Origin, which is the Osayande Racial Justice Initiative. And I'm very happy and pleased to be here, most of all, just to sit back and learn from my fellow panelists. This is a very important topic, certainly, as we witness, as the speaker before me shared, the rise of white nationalist militias. There have been more recent reports recently on how police departments across the country have indeed been infiltrated by white nationalist outfits and perpetrators. So on the eve of an election that I think we all would agree is likely to be one of the most consequential presidential elections of this generation, where we have, on the one hand, a candidate in Trump who has been most evidently the very mouthpiece of a white supremacist narrative that goes all the way back in this country to slavery, to colonialism, to the genocide of the indigenous people here. And so it is important for us, I would say, and this forum for us to really think about not just about how do we defeat that narrative, that's important, but also about how do we work with each other, how do we learn from each other, understanding that ultimately our success in resolving this question of white supremacy is only going to come as a consequence of our unity, of our solidarity. And by our, I am referring to all folks who agree that white supremacy is an ideology that should have no voice in the affairs of our country and even around the world, as we witness white supremacy operate throughout Europe, in Australia, the mass murder at Christchurch. These kinds of actions that continue to indicate that there is a clear effort on the part of the forces, and I would understand those forces to be capitalist forces, forces of imperialism, war, based upon these narratives, again, that indicate that if you are not white, that you are not only with respect to the United States, your citizenship is ever in question. And in fact, your humanity is in question as well. This is what we see when we witness the almost every other day occurrence of an African-American person being shot either by a white individual jogging in their neighborhood, or coming back home from the candy store, or the police. I bring greetings to you from Philadelphia, where we just the other day had a circumstance where a young man lost his life as he was clearly having a mental episode at the hands of the police. And so, these matters necessitate that we begin with an understanding and appreciation for what white supremacy is. It is an ideology. It is an understanding that affords whiteness, the very idea, the very identity of whiteness, to have its value. The value of whiteness is predicated upon the oppression of other people who are not white and the exploitation of their labor. And part of the work that I do with Origin is to help folk unpack that history so that we can have an appreciation of how the very laws that we are wrestling against today came to be, and the work that we need to do, not just to defeat those laws, but to go deeper and to defeat the very narratives that give life to those laws. And so, I think at least for now, I'll stop there and look forward to the conversation that we'll have. Again, just want to repeat that for me and the work that we do at Origin, it's really about education as the initial step, but the end step has to be, what are we going to do collectively? Because clearly we do not yet, any of our groups do not yet hold the political power to withstand the clear attacks that are now state sanctioned of white supremacy in this nation. So our salvation, if you will, is going to come as a consequence of our willingness and eagerness to work together to find solutions. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And as we go through the rest of our panel, towards the end, I'll ask everyone to share their contact information so that people can find out more. And you're right, it's about collective community building in order to respond to this threat. You're 100% correct. We're in the right place tonight. Thank you.
Very well.
Our next speaker is Amer Zahr. Amer, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well,
You're
thanks
welcome.
everybody for putting this together today, and thanks for having me. Thanks to Daisy and Ewuare before me, and thank you, Tahirah, for being a great host, and for the Muslim Caucus for putting this together. I am a Palestinian American. I'm a Palestinian activist. I've been a surrogate twice for Bernie Sanders on a national level, really trying to get, our communities out there and involved. And the theme of this event tonight, sort of fighting racism and Islamophobia, is something that Palestinians, especially, not more so necessarily than anybody else, but Palestinians especially have been dealing with from the jump, right? And in a little bit more of a unique way, in that this country, the political system, especially with the pro-Israel forces, cast Palestinians in the most racist ways for their own political gain. I mean, there's no question that the Israel lobby is one of the oldest and most experienced purveyors of Islamophobia and Zionist organizations in general, and Zionism in general, right? And so, for instance, saying, Palestinians raise their children to die. This is a form of Islamophobia. Saying Palestinians don't, they need to behave to get rights. This is a form of Islamophobia, and the same sort of rhetoric, by the way, that was used against Black people in America and against Black people in South Africa. It's not that unique. It's just still happening after 72 years at the highest levels of political engagement. And so we Palestinians find ourselves in a peculiar position where we are asking and continue to ask for solidarity from all communities. And we are gaining a lot, and we've gained a lot in the last few years. But we find lots of roadblocks, sometimes even in our own communities, because of the way the political system is, slanted against Palestinians and against the Palestinian narrative. So, for instance, in the Democratic Party, you have one of the most influential groups in the party, and especially influential in the Biden campaign, is called Democratic Majority for Israel. And they have worked tirelessly to not just promote their position, which that would be one thing, a very pro-Israel, right-wing pro-Israel position inside the Democratic Party, but to silence and marginalize Palestinian voices using their power to do that. We saw it over the summer in the DNC when the Biden campaign denounced Linda Sarsour for her BDS views, and the first people to come out in support of it was Democratic Majority for Israel. And so we see these patterns going on. Palestinians are the ones that are politically usually left out in the lurch, right? Because we have a unique position in the Democratic Party. I've been doing Democratic Party politics for a while, and the Democratic Party, we are the only ones that are asked to behave differently than everybody else. So the Black contingent of the Democratic Party is not asked to sit down and negotiate with white nationalists in the Democratic Party. The Latino contingent of the Democratic Party is not asked to sit down and negotiate with those armed vigilantes at the border who try to push back immigrants. But Palestinians are asked to sit down and play kumbaya with groups of people who literally believe there should be less of us in our homeland, okay? And literally believe in our expulsion and the denial of our existence and the right of return. And then on top of that, you have contingencies in, sadly, in the Muslim American community who are using contacts or fostering contacts with Zionist organizations in order to move up the ladder. And that's part of what we've seen with this whole thing with Mgage over the past couple months. That's really become much more to light. A lot of people have known for a while, but come much more to light, where that sort of marginalization of Palestinians and any sort of interfaith or cross work with Zionist organizations comes at the cost of Palestinians, right? It directly harms us because it whitewashes, this is all about Zionist organizations using contacts with Muslims to whitewash Israel's crimes. And so it whitewashes Israel's crimes, and it's not hypothetical. Even like when Arab governments do it, when the United Arab Emirates decided to make their deal with Israel a couple months ago, they announced it. And the next day there was a 10-day bombing campaign of Gaza that nobody talked about. So this is the things that we try to always bring out as Palestinians. Don't normalize with Zionist organizations here in America. That means the ADL, the AJC, AIPAC, the Washington Institute on Near East Policy, all these different organizations which have as their stock and trade Islamophobic practices and rhetoric to demean Palestinians, and then they want to turn around and use contacts with Muslims to whitewash the image of Israel. And Muslim organizations, especially, even more than other organizations, although we hope nobody normalizes with Zionism, whether it's blacks or Latinos or whites or anybody. But Muslims especially have to not do it because their willingness to do it is like gold to these Zionist organizations. And then some of them make the calculation that say, let me do this to move up quickly. And I'll tell you what, if you show me a Muslim or Arab organization that is willing to normalize with Zionists, I'll show you someone who's going to move up very quickly in the Democratic Party. And all of these play into the ongoing racism and Islamophobia that happens against Palestinians all the time. And so, I'll stop there for now. Hopefully we can talk more about this as we get along. But I appreciate everyone being here tonight. I appreciate everyone's solidarity, and thank you.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're here. Our next speaker is Rushan Abbas. Welcome, Rushan.
Hi. Sorry, I thought I was muted. Thank you so much for the opportunity for me to speak about my people, the genocide of the Uyghurs because of their race and their religion. China today has outlawed all the basic and the normal religious practices and they call them illegal Islamic activities. More than 3 million Uyghurs are in concentration camps complete with attached crematoria, while companies like famous brands like Zara, Nike, Calvin Klein, Gap, and many more are profit of the slave labor of millions of Uyghurs who are enslaved in factories across China. The world continues to buy the narrative of the oppressor while the Chinese regime seeks to distract and divide the international community. My own sister is among them, and her story reflects the truth of millions. She's a retired medical doctor, disappeared 26 months ago, and has absolutely no information on her whereabouts until now. These brutalities have led to what's now active genocide, largely due to geopolitical significance of our homeland for Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Eli Wiesel, Holocaust survival and author, wrote in his book Night, quote, I told him that I did not believe that people could burn people in our age, that humanity would never tolerate it, unquote. Here we are in the modern age, finding that the most base and the brutal side of the human nature is being encouraged to manifest itself in new technologically enabled ways by the Chinese Communist regime. The regime which is waging a war on religion, on free thought, culture, and the Uyghurs' ethnicity while conducting an active genocide today on our watch. Chinese officials have even stated that the Uyghurs' religion is a disease that needs to be cured. Many times, the Chinese regime lied about the very nature of those camps, reveals the truth. First, they denied the existence of the camps, then they called them schools. Finally, the Chinese perpetrators have continued to demand that the international community should not interfere in its domestic affairs. When there is an active genocide happening at the front of the entire world community, when China's actions in my homeland now includes every single act listed in the 1948 Genocide Convention, each of which the world, including China, is obligated to prevent, it's not China's internal affairs. The world must intervene. 13 tons of human hair in one shipment only seized by the US Customs. That's the reality of the human lives this represents hit you. I spend my own days in a free country wondering if this includes the hair of my sister. First-hand witness testimonies inform us that our worst nightmares are coming true as regards what human beings are capable of doing and ignoring. Physical and mental torture, forced marriage, mass rape, Orwellian surveillance, forced abortion, mandatory birth control, sterilization, arrest, beating, torture, child abduction, brainwashing, organ harvesting, crematoria, and the genocide. Addressing these things may seem costly in the short term, but what is the cost for the future of the entire world if these crimes against humanity are not addressed? Former Chinese Minister of Defense Che Haotian gave a speech in 2009 stating that Hitler's Germany had once bragged that German race was the most superior race on the earth. But the fact is, our nation is far superior to the Germans. Imagine those racist remarks he made. And he also continued by saying, in reviewing history, one may ask, will the center of the world civilization shift back to China? So we cannot afford to grant such a barbaric regime a seat at the table in the Human Rights, UN Human Rights Council panel. This civilization continues of the world must demonstrate the integrity to take concrete action to address these horrors before it's standing in and of itself is compromised by empty words. The soul of humanity is being tested. Will we have the moral courage to pass this test? Thank you.
I appreciate you and I'm grateful for your advocacy and for educating us. Thank you, Rushan. Zahra Billo is up next.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Jazakallah khair, Tahirah, for moderating our conversation, and to Ghazala, Muhammad, and Dustin for introducing us, and to each of your incredible organizations for the work that you're doing right now. I'll keep my comments brief. I am excited about the panel discussion. I've learned so much just listening to my co-panelists already. For those of you that I'm not familiar with, my name is Zahra. I'm at CARE San Francisco Bay Area, and this is these last few days of uncertainty before this really critical election. And that's what we keep getting told is we need to vote because that's what's going to change the course. We need to vote because it's going to change the course. And I'm reminded that I started my time at CARE actually during the Obama administration, when there was so much hope and change in the air, but it never came. I was asked recently about my thoughts as an American Muslim on Guantanamo, and I lost my composure answering the question, because I thought so many people voted for hope and change, and so many promises were left unfulfilled. Guantanamo is open. No war criminals have been held to account for any of their inhumane treatment of people. Nobody from the previous administrations has been charged with any crimes. And we know, of course, during the Obama administration that surveillance, informants, entrapment, all of these things continued. And so I'm struggling this weekend thinking about how much rests on what happens next Tuesday, and also how much may stay the same if we stop our work the day after the election, if we can sit back and fold our hands and say, okay, well, maybe we voted Trump out of office, maybe we took back the Senate, and then what? So the work has to continue afterwards, because the atrocities I referenced in just the brief few seconds I spent on them were not created under one administration or another administration or even another administration. They are part of a atrocious foundation that we all sit on. We all sit on stolen land as we tune into this webinar. We are all beneficiaries in some way, shape, or form of American imperialism, of American unchecked capitalism, of racism, and so much more. And so as I'm approaching next Tuesday and then thinking about 2021, what I'm trying to remember is that we have to commit our lives to solving these problems that we're often talking about and experiencing, that our work does not end with elections. In fact, elections are a small, small mark on a very long trajectory, and a very frightening one that this country has been on and will continue on unless we intervene. Not a day goes by that we don't hear about bad news, about a police killing, about someone forced out of their homes, about someone killed or tortured, or even just going hungry in the pandemic, someone not being able to get access to healthcare. Not a day goes by. And so it can be really hard to just keep pushing forward and saying we need to think about 2021, and frankly, not just 2021, but 2040. And so I take strength in knowing that the giants who came before us, that the civil rights activists who came before us, but also really more importantly for me, that our prophets, peace be upon them, all of them, worked their entire lifetimes to realize visions of justice for all people. And so we do need to mobilize for today, tomorrow, next week, and next year, but we need to recommit to making this a way of life.
Wonderful guidance. I appreciate it, Zahra. Rowaida Abdelaziz will join us now.
Assalamualaikum, everyone. And thank you, Tahirah, for moderating, and the Muslim caucus and everyone involved. And going to sound like a broken record, but really echoing the gratitude and appreciation for everyone that's here and the important work that we all do in an individual capacity. And we're just halfway through our program, and there are so many aspects and angles to the topic of Islamophobia. And I think this is incredibly important. And I'm glad that this is a series that's been happening, because there's so much to talk about. As Tahirah mentioned earlier, I'm a national reporter at HuffPost, where I cover Islamophobia and social justice issues that predominantly impact the Muslim communities. And, some way or form, I've reported on a lot of the discussions and the topics that we've had so far, but it's a lot, and it's a lot for me as a single reporter. And really, I think speaks to the need for this conversation, not just in our community, but also in mainstream media. When we talk about issues of Islamophobia, racism, and white supremacy, I think about different things. Not only do I think about how I report on these topics, but I also think about how do these exact issues, Islamophobia, racism, and white supremacy, influence the power structures and the power dynamics in mainstream media, and who has the power and privilege to set the narrative for a community. media everywhere, whether we're talking about broadcast, digital, radio, podcasting, is pretty homogenous. It's predominantly white and still run by white men. And that means the storytelling aspect often comes from this lens guised as objectivity. And we as Muslims are no strangers to this concept of stagnant, negative coverage of our communities. And I say stagnant and negative because this isn't about giving dawah. This isn't about preaching or convincing people that Islam is a religion or the right religion, but it's talking about, and really my role is about finding equity in media and discussing that Muslims, like anybody else, like anyone else, deserve their humanity when we're telling their stories, and that we're speaking to them and not for them. And so we know firsthand, and to the point where the community stopped engaging with media because it seemed that no matter what they did, when the stories were being published, whether we're talking about foreign stories, about communities abroad, or even the communities right here, are still being told in a one-dimensional way. And this is not just something that we are imagining. Studies and research has consistently proven this to us time and time again. And so really my role as a reporter who covers these issues is not only bringing to light these different structures of, we're not just talking about the impact of racism, Islamophobia, and white supremacy and how it's impacting our communities, whether we're talking about the rise of hate crimes, the shutting down of our institutions, but we're also talking about it in a structural and institutional level and the powers at play. And this is something that is not unique to one particular party, right? We've seen this whether Democrats are in power or Republicans in power. It seems that Islamophobia is a nonpartisan issue for many. But for us, it comes down to people's livelihoods. And I think it's incredibly important to dissect the coverage and really being critical of mainstream media when we're talking about how are they covering the topics of Islam and Muslims. I mean, it's 2020 and we're still dealing with the stereotypes and tropes of, Muslim women and them being oppressed and not being spoken to, right? When we're just looking about who's being interviewed in stories, we are looking at an erasure of Black and Latino Muslims, right? Often centralizing the Arab and South Asian experience, despite the fact that Black Muslims are the first and the oldest Muslim community here in the US, dating back to slavery. And when we're talking about the most diverse faith group in the country, a faith group that has no majority race, is still racialized in a way that has a lot in common. And when it comes to its ties with racism. So racism and Islamophobia absolutely go hand in hand. And so there is so much work that needs to be done for our stories to be told accurately and to reflect the diversity of the community. That's absolutely not a monolith, and how we function, how we operate, and how we vote. And I think these are incredible topics that I'm looking forward to dissecting more as we go on to the Q&A. And I'm looking forward to really learning from my fellow panelists and having a really thoughtful conversation.
Wonderful contribution. Thank you. And I can't wait for the follow-up as well. Our next speaker is Abdul Samad. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. First of all, let me thank the Muslim Caucus, Ghazala, and everyone that's involved with that. And let me again say honored to be here with the distinguished panel. There's not much left to say. I think the panelists, said it all. I just always have said that we have to understand the root cause. We can talk about the symptoms every day. And as long as we address the symptoms, then we will always end with the same results. We have to understand that, when we talk about racism, we have to understand that, when we look at in the 1705, that when the first first slaves and were declared property, we have to look at that mindset, because that mindset continues on today. That mindset, that conditioning. When we deal with Islamophobia, it's a mindset, it's a conditioning that we have the powers to be in this country and globally that wanted to demonize Muslims, that wanted to hold Black people still in a very marginalized community. But to do that, you have to sell the whys. We have to do that. And to the American public, to the world. When we look at statements of the leadership in Japan, when they said that they should treat Black people like they treat their prostitutes, we got to understand, where did that mindset come from? When we look at, an individual that leads the free world, they say that Muslims are dangerous. You have to fear that these are terrorists, that we're killing them, and sets that into motion. We have to understand the mindset. Until we start addressing that mindset and changing that mindset, we will always have these issues. That means our babies will have to deal with these issues. So we have to get past the symptoms, and we have to begin to understand that we have to begin, one, telling our story. Everyone tells our story but us. And it's good to understand about the hadiths. It's good to understand what we're talking about, the Quran, but we have to tell our story. We have to tell the story what actually happened with Mahatma Begin and Anwar Sadat. We have to tell what happened with Jimmy Carter. We have to tell what actually dealt with slavery, what is left out of slavery. That means that we have to start telling our story, our history, not his story, but our story. Because as long as we don't educate people, after 9/11, people were scared to death. People were ready to shoot, beat, everything with Muslims. If they could have imported Muslims back to another country, they would have. But because of the fact that we were able to get and tell our stories, because of the fact we were able to hold the open houses, we stepped up, but there was still a fear factor. And dealing with Muslims, not only here, but abroad, Muslims were scared to speak up. The fear was there. And as long as we can be held with fear in our hearts, then we cannot address racism. We can't address Islamophobia. We can't address the oppression. We have to understand that we have nothing to lose and all in the world to gain. As long as Black people feel fearful to even drive down the street. And I'll close with the fact that we have to understand, I like what Winston Churchill said. He said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they try everything else. We have to understand the conditioning that we are in and what we're having to deal with. How is that conditioning? We all got upset, and we have to ask each and every one of ourselves. We all got upset with Trayvon Martin, the shooting in 2012, the Michael Brown shooting in 2014, the Tamir Rice shooting, a 12-year-old in 2014, who was playing cops and robbers in the park. And 2 minutes after the police officer showed up, who had been kicked off the force of someone out of another law enforcement agency, Tamir Rice was dead. Sandra Bland. We look at George Floyd. George Floyd, yeah, we did a rising and people came out to work. But where were we? Where were we when Dr. King was marching? Where were we when we look at Emmett Till was shot? Those are the things that we have to go to the bottom line. Where were we as Muslims when we saw individuals being killed in Tulsa, Oklahoma after 9/11? Where are we in the overall picture of the struggle? And I say to you that we have to be at the forefront of being and dealing with these ills in our country so that someday we can be proactive. That's what we have to be able to do. So I'll be quiet with that because now you have hit a passion of mine. You have really hit a serious passion because of being in the Black Panther Party and beginning this struggle at the age of 16 and a half and watching many of my friends in the Panther Party, from Fred Hampton to Little Bobby Hutton to Huggins being shot down and killed. Me being in a house in 1969 when they blew up the whole Panther headquarters. So it's a passion for us to really sit down and start dealing with the root cause so we can quit dealing with symptoms and we can come up with the systemic changes and the systemic laws that we need to come up with and solutions. Because if we don't, our babies will suffer. And we do not have the luxury to allow this election, the conditions, to continue to put that trauma on our babies for the next few generations. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to keep you on the screen. We're coming towards the end of the hour, but I want to put you a little bit on the spot. I had an opportunity to speak to some college students recently, right before the pandemic hit, and they were talking about the centering of Arab voices as the voice of the American Muslim and the erasure of African American Muslims, as Rowaida had just spoken about. But my brother, as you were talking about where are our Muslim community members when the African American community and Muslim community needs them. One of the things I said to the students were, Black women die in childbirth 3-4 times at the rate of our Caucasian women counterparts. We need the Muslims to stand up with us in discussing that issue, just like we stand up with the global Muslim community against the travel ban. And so there are lots of opportunities for Muslims to stand in solidarity with one another with our very unique and non-monolithic issues in this country. Tell me what you say to young people, to children, about what you consider to be the most urgent thing pressing this country right now. You say, if we don't tell our stories, no one will. What is the one thing that you're saying to young people that they must know now with all urgency? And then we'll continue to open it up to others over the next few minutes.
I think young people, we have to be able to tell them that if you're not at the table, then you're the menu. That one of the problems that we have is that some of us have been very comfortable with being the menu because we've been able to go to the White House and have dinner. We've been able to go into certain rooms, but when we go in there, we're not going with a strategic agenda to be able to make those changes. You know, the young people that we have now that are taking to the street, I don't call them protesters, I call them game changers. They are saying, like Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're saying that we want change and we want it now. Now we have to be able to help them through the processes and tell our young people that everyone is needed in this revolutionary process, that we have to identify the lanes that we are in so that when the young people are speaking in the street, we have legislators, elected officials speaking for them. We have parents being able to support them and have that real conversation about history and about our story. When we talk about the development of Islam in this country, we have to be realistic. And if I can say this, and I'll be quiet, but we in the Muslim community have to be realistic. We have to deal with our own ills. If we talk about it takes a village to raise a child, and we don't recognize the ills of that village, then we have the same problems that we have every single day with our young people developing subcultures because they don't trust the system. They don't trust us. So we have to be able to have those honest conversations with our young people. It's not a us and them, old school and new school. what we're talking about is us working together. And I mentioned yesterday, not in silos, but come together. You know, I asked each one of you how much, you know, I mean, now I'll be quiet with that because, you know, we are on different levels, but we got to understand, and I'm guilty of that. I don't know when the last time I donated to the Muslim caucus. Because if we want the Muslim caucus to do what it needs to do, then not only we have to be part of leadership and these forums, but we got to donate. We got to donate to make sure folk can do what they need to do. We got to get money. If you want Muslim politicians to be able to get more Muslim politicians, we got to donate. Not because on a federal level, we got to go to local levels. And I'll be quiet with that because we have such distinguished panelists. And I don't want to take that. And I said, y'all touched the passion with me because I've watched people die. I've held them in my arms, you know, on my wall at Creative Visions. You know, when I first opened Creative Visions in '96, I had 45 names on our wall of individuals who have been killed. To date, I have 230 names on that wall. And one of those names are my baby boy who was shot to death because we're not dealing with the mindset that needs to be dealt with and changed.
I mean, that's very deep. To the others who are joining us today, I'd like to open it up for your contribution, your thoughts, your reflection, information that you think that viewers need to know right now. Where's the urgency that we are overlooking? Feel free to jump in.
If I may, first of all, thank you, Brother Akko, for sharing that with us, and Allah yarhamu. I always remember, you know, thinking about Malcolm when he told us that you have to be careful of the fox and the wolf. Everybody remember that? You know, the wolf looks you in the face and snarls his teeth, and you know where you stand with him. And the fox shows you his teeth, but he's smiling. But in the end, they both want to eat you. And so I think it's important that we are always clear-eyed about what we have to do. You know, voting is one small part, an essential part, but one small part of the activist road that I hope we're all on. You spend that 15 minutes, you go and vote. This time, you know, in my point of view, I made a video a few days ago where I said, you know, Trump is the extreme hunger in the middle of the desert, and Biden is the ham that you're allowed to eat when you have no other options. So, okay, fine. You do that for 1 minute, but once that extreme hunger is gone, the prohibition comes back into effect. So we have to all understand that we are going to have a big fight ahead of us. There are lots of groups still in the Democratic Party, and especially in the establishment parts of the Democratic Party, that are not interested in our advancement. So we cannot become wed to parties or dogma if we are going to move forward. That's exactly what Malcolm said, right? This idea of partisanship in our, yes, surely the Democratic Party is more welcome to us. That's fine. But we have to be clear and clear-eyed about where we stand. And on all these issues that we talked about today, and I just see it more clearly with Palestine because I work on that, that we don't have real solidarity in these sort of liberal circles. They let us in, but we don't have real solidarity. So, you know, we are at the table, but we're sort of still on the menu. So we have to make sure that we are always speaking for ourselves and staying principled and not being willing to compromise on our principles in order to have more access to power. Because guess what? It's okay to say no to power. It's okay to say no to politicians. And believe it or not, you end up getting more. Don't try to take a photo with a politician. Do something that makes that politician want to take a photo with you. And nothing creates that more than standing on your principles.
Great advice. I know that we're at the 9 o'clock hour, and I did that if you had anything urgent to share, I would make sure that we open the door to do that. I do want you all to share your contact information so that your own platforms can be increased, your messages can get out. So I opened that up now in no particular order.
funny. So I think we're all just staring at each other, wondering if we should read off our Twitter handles.
Yes. Go ahead.
but thank you, Tahirah, for that opportunity. I do just want to say that I so appreciate everything that's been said, and really what I'm carrying and hoping to continue carrying forward is that we are standing on the shoulders of giants who have come before us, who have done this work for so long and continue to do it. And we know that it doesn't end on November 3rd. If anything, that is just a small speck in our much longer calendar. I'm on Twitter at Zahra Billo, and really if folks want to connect with CARE, need legal help, are facing hate crimes or discrimination, are being visited by the FBI, or even just have questions about where to find their polling place, how to vote, and so on, they can find us at care.com, just CAIR.com.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll share some final thoughts. First of all, just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to be here with all of you. I learned so much and hope that these kinds of conversations can continue in the future, regardless of the outcome of the election. Our community's hopes and aspirations are not, as has been echoed throughout this panel, tied up in either party. And yet we have to find ways to utilize the Democrat Party, certainly, to achieve certain ends. I believe that we ought to consider taking a page out of history and think about what, for example, Fannie Lou Hamer and the others did down in the South in Mississippi when they developed the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party as a means to raise local concerns at a national level at a time in which, of course, as we recall, Mississippi Democrat Party was totally racist. It was a whites-only club. And so those black folk down there organized an independent political party as a means to pressure, to apply pressure on the political party. I'm still frustrated with the Democratic Party since Gore and how he capitulated given the Supreme Court decision. We certainly have those concerns coming into Tuesday with the way the polls are indicating. So, we don't want to have a repeat. And so in that spirit, I say that, one of the things I'm hoping that all of us will be on board for doing as we move into a future past this election is to really think about and organize around abolishing the Electoral College. It has no place in our democracy any longer. And of course, we know its foundings were wholly racist as it provided electoral power to slaveholders. And so, definitely want to show my support going forward for the work of the Muslim Caucus as they do their work in educating and building up local political folks from the grassroots level, folks that want to reach out to me and learn more about the work of Origin and what we're doing with respect to anti-racism work can contact us through the website racial-justice.org. And in terms of following my work, personally, you can find me on any of the platforms by my name, Ewuare Osayande.
Wonderful, thank you. Rowaida, you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. I mean, I think one major takeaway that I personally have benefited from is oftentimes we find ourselves in these spaces where keywords are throwing at us, right? White supremacy, racism, events like what happened in Tulsa and elsewhere. And if you don't know what these events or these topics mean, that is not a shameful thing. But I think it is incredibly important for us to continue to educate and self-educate, right? There are so many resources out there. I mean, this panel itself has highlighted a number of various different resources, whether we're talking about legal help, educational help, talking about storytelling, talking about a wide range of guidance. And I think, as a journalist and as a reporter, I'm consistently reading and talking and listening to people. And I'm learning a new thing every day. I will be the first to admit that I don't know everything. And I don't always know the solutions, right? And none of us here, if I may impose and speak for the panel, to say none of us know what is the solution to solving all of these very heavy topics. And so I really encourage everyone to do their due diligence, because, you know, true education starts at home. I mean, it starts by having difficult conversations, sometimes with the people closest to us. And so affording one another the compassion and the humility to be able to hold these spaces like this one, I'm immensely grateful for, and is an incredibly important part of my job. And I think for many of us, I mean, this is a principle, right? We know that is highlighted in Islam, the concept of ilm and humility. And I think now more than ever, with an era of fake news and just the way social media works, oftentimes it gets too easy to get caught up in silos and bubbles, like Brother Akeo was mentioning earlier. And so I think this is something that I'm definitely walking away with, and I hope that is something that the rest of us and, you know, our viewers can reflect on as well. If you are interested in pitching a story, whether it's an injustice you face or just even a topic that maybe you have nothing, you don't know anything about and just want to see more about, feel free to shoot me a note. I'm on Twitter. My handle is Rowaida_Abdel, ABDEL. It's too long for Twitter to fit my full first and last name, so we'll just have to cut it off at there. My email is rowaida@huffpost.com. And if you're just, you know, a person who's interested in getting into journalism and media, it's an industry that we definitely need more reporters of color. We need more diversity in this field, again, to be able to tell our stories and our narratives with the nuances and the complexities that it deserves, really emphasizing on different aspects of our lives. Again, we as a community have so much to show for and so much to reflect on, and we're doing so much. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. You know, there's very few of us in this industry, so consider my invitation an open door for anyone who'd like to learn more, whether you're interested in the field, whether you're an organizer, whether you're a student. I'm here to have those conversations and looking forward to participating and learning more with these spaces. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it. Who's left? Who's left?
Would you like me to say something?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think that our nation is going to need some healing after what has happened in the last 4 years. And I think as Muslims, we could rise up to that challenge because we have a very strong concept of Tawheed in our faith, which we all believe in. And it's something that is at the heart of our religion. And if we could take that, repackage that, and use that as a way to unifying our country, our people, because many people have consumed this hate because you know, there are specific platforms that are leading them to it. So there are many people who are lost. There are some people that you can never really change, whose hearts and minds you can't change. But there are many people that are lost and hungry for Muslims to reach out. And I'll just give a very recent example. I know the bell is ringing, but I've been working on another project on 30 rights of Muslim women, and most of my interns are non-Muslim and some are Muslim. And the non-Muslim interns have told me, we are shocked at how beautiful this religion is. We are stunned that Islam is such a great religion, that the way it treats women. How is it that you guys have not been able to convey this? So I think that it's about taking the best of our faith, promoting it in a very active way, not in a dawah way, in an active way to educate the public, but also for all of us to really come together, because united we will rise and divided we always fall. And I'm giving a challenge to the Muslim community to please, let's put our differences aside, whatever they might be, and see if we could come together, because together we can make the change that is necessary for us in our nation and the globe as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may, I would ask if Sister Ghazala could, again, as of last night, be able to send us each other's contact so that we will have that, you know, to reach out to one another. You know, I enjoyed meeting everyone on the panel. One of the things that I'm hoping to be able to do after the elections is that when I can, I would really like to connect with individuals and just to meet you and see your organizations, to see what actually is going on. I know travel is difficult, because of the pandemic, but I think that reaching out and being able to meet you personally, and so I can learn about you and the agenda, because I think that's the only way we can put that together. I am also in the process of publishing my second book. I'm writing it in. Unfortunately, every time that I think I'm heading to a finish, this country surprises me and does something even crazier. So, but the book name is Living a Lie, How to Save Wounded America. So I'm looking forward to meeting with everyone. Sister Ghazala, I'm looking forward to even working closer with the Muslim caucus, because of the work that the caucus is doing, and appreciate that. But I welcome you as friends on my Facebook page. I would love you to request that friendship. I do have 5,000 friends, but for you, I would knock somebody off. Right? Without a doubt, because there's people that have been hanging on. So anyway, just please friend me so I can be with you, in this struggle, because I'm your brother and you're my sisters and brothers. Let's work together. Let's do what we have to do. Let's make this change for the good. Let's make it permanently. Thank you again. Alhamdulillah. I've been blessed tonight with the presence of all of you. That's
Well, wow.
Thank you.
That was an amazing presentation by each one of you. The diversity of our community is so beautiful, and the intersectionality of all of these diverse issues comes to the same systemic racism problem that our nation and humanity has faced for so long, right? And so, Tahirah, you did such an amazing job with moderating the panel. We want to thank you so much for joining us. Each one of you, our goal with the Muslim Caucus, and also now partnering with Center for Global Muslim Life and JETPAC, is to start working groups on each one of these segments that we're doing every night. We want to have a national working group on poverty. We want to have a national working group on racism, disinformation, Islamophobia, all of these issues every night that we're unpacking, is to finally come back after the election and start building a strategic plan where we're not working in silos, because we need each other. Like Daisy said, like we've all been saying, we cannot do this alone. It's not something that's going to go away overnight, but together, all of us, we can make a difference. And I strongly believe, with our tawheed and our faith and our values, we don't have to compromise our values. I think if anything, it's our values that can help us, save us on all of these issues, or protect us, or alleviate so many of these issues that we're seeing. So inshallah, that is our goal. Look for that working group email from us. We will connect all of you. And after the election, like we all have been saying, our work is just beginning. It's not the end. It's just starting. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time and joining us tonight. And Dustin, if you want to share anything else, I know we have amazing panels coming up. Tomorrow is on disinformation, and we have seen that a lot, since 2016. I don't know what is fake news and what is right news. We have no idea, but there is a lot of disinformation, and there's a lot of disinformation when it comes to Muslims. And so how do we combat that, and how do we recognize that? So we're going to have a very lively discussion tomorrow night on that. So please tune in 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. tomorrow night again on the Muslim Caucus Facebook page, and our friends will be posting it on their Facebook pages. We invite you to like our page, share all of this, and make comments. And we will definitely be following up with all of you.
Yeah, and thank you all again for joining us. You can see below, you can text Muslim Vote to 79606, and JETPAC has 24-hour staff no matter where you are in the United States, who can respond to your questions. We have a Digital Media Academy going on right now because as all of our organizations have gone online, we all need to be trained in this amazing digital media production work so that we can compete and that so we can keep our organizations alive. You can learn more at the link that we shared in the comments. And of course, support the Muslim Caucus. And we'll be back tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you to the panel. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Ghazala.